Well, we're back. I'm testing out a new audio system. I need you to let me know if you can hear me okay. We got lavalier microphones for John and I. Might get him to put one on here. We'll see what happens. He'll explain his Nobler to you. So we'll wait a minute for somebody to come in here. Before I get too wrapped up, make sure you can hear me. Okay, we got a thumbs up, and I need you to let me know if you can hear me. We got 2 thumbs up with only 1 watcher. That's good. Please type in the chat box if you can hear me.
Got a hole.
You got a hole already, huh?
Must have hit it with the edge of the sandpaper or something.
Okay, they can hear us. Good. All right. Here's your microphone, John.
Oh, through. I'm tethered.
Just clip it on your shirt there.
Can you hear me now?
All right. John's going to explain his Nobler to you.
I don't know what to explain. I'm sanding. And more sanding. And more sanding.
Let's see if they can hear
When
you.
you think
Okay.
you're done sanding, you're sanding some more.
Please let me know if you can hear John okay.
So I've only got a little bit done here. Well, I said a little bit. About half the airplane started to get sanded out. Probably end up looking like this. You see a sort of a modded finish on the whole airplane when it's done. These are pretty close. Might get a little bit more off of it, but we're gonna rough sand it first and block sand it basically, because right now I don't use too many finger type things except on the open bays where I'll cut a little round L out of sandpaper and sit in these open bays and just sort of go around.
Let's see what he said. John, audio kind of quiet. Yeah, John's kind of quiet.
Yeah, I'm not a big loud mouth, I guess. Unless I'm pissed. But it's coming out pretty good. I mean, I didn't have as many faux pas in it as I thought I would have. This is a new primer that one of the guys came up with that's sort of an expensive primer about, I can't remember what it was a can.
$15.
$15 a can. But this airplane's only got the whole airplane, including the flaps, the cowls, wheel pants, landing gear. It's got 1 can of primer on it. And I had to open up a second can because I lacked about, I don't know, maybe an eighth of one side of the wing to do. So I had to pinch it up a second can. I guess if I probably hadn't have gotten overzealous on the rest of the airplane, I probably could have done it all in 1 can. And that's all I'm going to put on it. I'm not putting any more primer on it. This is it. And I'm sanding it out, and I'm looking for all my little spots. I got a spot putty. And so far, I've been pretty fortunate. I haven't found a whole heck of a lot of them. But I'm going to sand, as you can see right now, this whole airplane looks solid gray. It looked, just a solid gray. You cannot see through it. when it was in full primer, and now you can see how much primer that I've sanded off of it, and you can, what grade that's left on there, you can just about see through it. It's that thin on there, and that's, I'll even sand a little bit more of that off of it. So any of these, like these bigger spots where you see the primer, I'll probably individually, go around and just lightly sand that and get a little bit more of it off. It's all about weight. We'll have to get the underside of it finished sanded, which you can see I've still got the main wing section on the bottom and the stab to do yet, and the fin and rudder. And we'll get that sanded, and then we'll stick it back on the scale again and weigh it and see where we're at. I don't know what I did. I poked a little hole back here in the bottom of it. Probably the edge of the sandpaper. It can help if you take your sandpaper, and I didn't do it, round all the corners off with a pair of scissors before you start using them, so you don't have any hard pointy edges on your sandpaper. And I failed to do that, and I think that's what caused that. I hit it, but realize this is only double aught silk span. This isn't medium or heavy. This is
Pre-flight.
pre-flight stuff. So you gotta be really careful. When I sand these open bays and stuff in here and all these exterior sections, I do I do the open bays first. We'll probably show some of this in a little bit. But I'll take a little piece of sandpaper about a 1/2 inch diameter or an oval shape, and I stick it to my finger, and I'll sit there and just work these. Now, don't sand any surrounding areas until you do your open bays. Don't do any cap strips, don't do any hard edges, do the open bays first. That gives you a little sanding area room. But sit here and just work up to the edge, but not on the edge, and save the edges for last, because it's only going to take like one little swipe across it to get any rough off of it for your final paint job. But do all the open bays first, and this will take a while. I'll probably spend 4 hours on just these two wing panels, to get them down to like this, and then another 4 hours to get them really down where I want them. That's getting into real fine and nitpicky. So we talk about getting into the zen of sanding. That's the zen of sanding, because you're going to be sitting here like this, rubbing in little teeny circles for what feels like forever. But if you keep the dust wiped off and your sandpaper cleared out, brush it off on a cloth or something, and then just go right back in it.
You're using our red 320?
I'm using red 320 right now. And I did all this with probably three little round nickel-sized pieces, dime-sized pieces of paper, and one piece about 3 inches square. And this whole airplane's been done with just that.
I think 3M and some of these other companies that I use, they should sponsor this channel, because like when I mentioned OS 32Fs, they went off the chart. When I Super Tiger 60s, off the chart. Rev ups, off the chart. You can't find them now because all I did was mention them. So the best sandpaper that I have, DC 540 is a perfect example. We used it so much it went out of business. Anytime you got something good, it's
Take it away.
they take it away. But that 3M sandpaper is the best sandpaper I found in all my modeling career. Grab that and let's show them.
If I can get over there.
Yeah, you should be able to.
It just doesn't load up much. I mean, it'll act like it loads up. That's a roll, and there's about probably a quarter of that missing.
It comes in a roll about yay big around. It's $35 for this roll, but you should be able to build at least 3 airplanes out of it. No problem. But this stuff is the 3M paper.
Adhesive back.
Yeah, sticky back. And when it loads up, you just take it on a paper towel or washcloth or whatever and unload it. And you know, this stuff lasts forever. It's great stuff.
And there's a little piece right there, as you can see. It just fits on the tip of my finger. And I'll sit here with this, and you'll hear it. You can maybe go just one little very light swipe down everything. It gives you your outline that you want to stay within. And it's a matter of this right here, guys. Sweat equity.
Show them that piece of sandpaper again, because get up close.
You can see it on the end of my finger. And it says sticky back sandpaper, and if it doesn't stick good enough on you, put your little drop of super glue on there, and then you just take that and it loads up a little bit. It's just loaded with dust, but there's no stuck paint in it. And just wipe it off on something, it'll be clear again, and you go right back to work. But I'll sit here and go over every one of these little open bays like this, and like I said, I stay away from any hard edge. Stay 1/8 of an inch away from it.
If you get on the hard edge, it will cut the silk span right there, and then you're crying because you have a repair.
And it's really easy with a little piece of sandpaper like this to get right up to it. I don't want to use a 3-inch wide piece to try to do this with, because you'll be all over the place and you'll cut it off forever. This allows you to get into all them little nooks and crannies, and it can go pretty quick.
Listen for the tone change in the paper.
I've heard one already, and then there's the paper sort of loaded up. If you can see it. Now it's not, now just wipe it on the surface and see there's nothing stuck in there. Of course, this is primer, it's a dry paint.
It does
not a gummy paint.
It does the same with clear and everything else. Balsa wood.
But keep the dust wiped away, you know, and your paper wiped off, and just sit here and start sanding and do a little bit at a time. I'll just start on one panel and and it's up to you on how far you want to take this. That panel right there is smooth right now. You could paint on it, but I want to remove more primer. So I'll sit here for, I mean, this will be my base sand out. And you can see the tissue paper through that primer. That's how light that primer's on there. This airplane, when I primered it, I'll say what I did. I didn't sit here and just spray these open bays like this. I sprayed this leading edge from this side forward, from this angle, and they're spray cans, and I started here and just let it overlap a little bit, because I wanted to get that hard edge, primer on that hard edge. So I sprayed this way, I sprayed this way, I sprayed that way, and I sprayed this way. And I did all these solid surfaces, and whatever went on this open bay is overspray. I just took one swipe just to make things sort of level, and it wasn't a slow swipe either. It was just sort of a pretty quick, about like that. Swipe across there just to sort of even it out a little bit, so when I can't sand my cap strips, they'll all be pretty even. But that's it. I mean, you know, this airplane, even with the primer on it, when you get done, you can still see, you'll be able to see more light than that through it. I wish I could do it without primer, but to get a really nice paint finish, you just about have to use primer. So this is it. Sanding, and more sanding. And you can tell by the dust that even though you don't think you're getting nothing off, it's coming off. I'm getting to the point right now on this open bay already that we're good for the initial sanding. That gets all the hard little rough rocks off of it. like I say, you can see a good 1/8 of an inch around all the edges, all the hard spots. And we'll just go over to a second and listen to the difference between this and this. That's the difference when you hear. And you'll hear that change as you're sanding along.
I don't know if they can hear it in the lav mic, but
And I just took my finger and just very lightly just touched that. And what that did was give me a line. I mean, I'm not putting any pressure on this. I don't want to put any pressure on it. Just one little swipe. And all that does is it gives me an outline where to sand up to. And then I stop at that because I'm not going to sand any of those cap strips until all this is done a couple times. So we'll just sit here and just keep working on this. That little piece of paper allows you to get right up there pretty dang close.
the reason why I'm videotaping this is John and I do things very similar. Now, John's a good builder and finisher. However, I do not primer open beige, but that's your choice. I tape those off. I want to keep that paint off there as much as possible. And I don't have to go through the sanding. But basically, John and I do things exactly the same. And if you'll notice, any of the good builders, their airplanes look the same because there's only one way to do something. One final result.
I really don't try to get up into these corners real well right now. I'm just sort of working it towards them. My big whole object right now is just to get the majority of the open bay sanded away. Like I say, this is just the initial rough sanding.
What I'm doing today is, let me show you what I'm doing. This is probably going to be the last day working on the Tucker Special until I can get clear on it. So what I did was 2 weeks ago I went and bought a printer. It's an Epson printer, as you guys remember that fiasco stream that we had. But I finally got the decals printed. And normally I use the Krylon Crystal Clear, but John convinced me to just shoot dope over it. It turned out all right. We'll see what happens when we put it in the water. But in order to get those decals to show up vivid and bright, you have to paint white behind it. So I took my sign plotter and hand me a scalpel. Oh, you can't.
There's a couple right there. There's 3 of them right there by the pins.
Yeah. Microphones do make it a pain in the butt. Need a quick disconnect set.
Wireless.
Yeah, wireless would be good. Wireless would cost big time.
5 times the cost.
So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to weed out the stencil, maybe. Come on. There we go. I did 4 of them for the simple fact, Murphy. I'd hate to be over here and only have 2 of them and one of them go bad. So we'll get 2 of them out of there anyway. I hope you guys are enjoying the Saturday at John's series. Seems like it, the numbers are up. Hit that like button, subscribe, super chat, whatever you can do, leave a comment. I'm probably going to do another design series video like I did with the Nobler, because I've been asked again to do that on some different things. So the next thing to do here is get my transfer tape out.
Well, the difference in the sound is just phenomenal. You want to know how much pressure I'm using? Not very much. You let the sandpaper do the work.
Can I cut this with your good scissors? Paper tape.
Yeah. Where's yours at?
At home.
You saving yours? Don't mean to be begging, but if anybody's got any machining stuff that they wish to contribute to the shop, you'll all be welcome. I watch a guy called Tubacane on the internet. He's pretty interesting. He's like an old shop teacher. And this guy's got everything under the sun, but they sent him more free stuff than Carter's got a little Liverpool, and it's the little guys that need the free stuff, probably not him. He's got more stuff than he knows what to do with, but he's very, very informative, does a lot of things. You can learn the basics of machining and get yourself in trouble. But the guy is very informative. We're always looking for cutter bits and stuff like that, because all that stuff is really expensive when you get into this machining stuff. That's where a lot of your cost is. My little mill was pretty cheap, but I can rack up 5 times that cost in tooling alone. Phenomenally expensive. And I don't do anything for money. I don't do commercial work. I really don't like to, I really just like to keep it to my personal needs, little onesie-twosie parts here and there. I mean, Sparky comes over and sometimes I'll help him, but for the most part, I make him make his own parts. The equipment's here. Go over there and learn how to mill. Teach yourself. Some of the harder stuff I've already done, obviously I'll go ahead and help out on that kind of stuff, but it's just for the hobby. It's just personal pleasure, and you can't buy the stuff. I mean, it cost me about 6 hours to make a ton muffler or something like that, and I could buy one for $30, but it's a self-satisfaction. I made it. It doesn't matter to me how long it takes. I got a piece of scrap aluminum that didn't cost me a dime, and it's got my time in it. So I sort of like fiddling with that kind of stuff. Anybody that's a gearhead or a motorhead or whatever understands about turning wrenches, and you know the satisfaction you get out of building a nice motor for your drag car or whatever, and the process you go about learning how to do it, and, different techniques of doing things. It's all part of it. That's the fun of all of it.
Can you guys hear John okay? Type in the chat box and let me know if you can hear John okay. I noticed when we were doing these Day at John's videos with the microphone from the cell phone, you could barely hear us. So just for you guys, I went and got lavalier mics.
I've got a tendency to not speak up. I mumble. Or I don't say anything. In fact, this isn't really my forte in making videos. I'm sort of new to this. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, but between you and I, we passing on some, a lot of information.
This is all good, yeah. It's all good for everybody that wants to get better and improve in your building skills. I hope this helps. It's not the only way to do things. This is my way, or Sparky's way. By all means, it is not the only way. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. But this has worked for me over the years. I'm sure what Sparky does has worked for him his way over the years. And if you ask either one of them, I'll be the first one to admit I'm the biggest thief there is when it comes to stealing information on how to do things.
What's going on there in that fillet area?
In the what area?
Look at the fillet area there.
That's where I had to put that patch on there. I got to put a little CA in there and push that down. That's that patch. I didn't get it rubbed down real good. When I put that primer on, it showed up. I didn't see it in the regular light. But I sanded through the covering right there. That's only about a 1/4 inch wide balsa wood in here. When I sanded in that fillet area, I sanded through the covering in this hole back here. I had to put a patch on it to bridge it. When I did, I must not rub that piece down too much. We'll get in there with some thin CA and wick it in there and rub it down. And it'll be good. And I got to patch that little teeny hole where I poked that with the sandpaper.
So far, you're doing good. Did I end up with 2 holes in this one?
Yeah, a couple holes. It's tough, man. You're using that double-aught silk span. It is not forgiving at all. Now these sides, I covered these holes in these sides with mica film, which you can't get anymore. And I'd like to try to find some more. I got a very little teeny bit left. But when it comes to silk span, it's probably weighs about the same as Japanese tissue or double aught silk span, but it's got the strength of about medium or heavyweight silk span, and it's pretty tough stuff, and very shiny on the outside, so it takes less dope to finish. The one thing you'll find with it does not go around curves worth of crap. It is heat shrinkable, so I put it on. You can iron it on. They say you can use that iron text or cover right type stuff to iron around the edges, but I just doped it on. It's got one side that's sort of plastic-ish, and the other side's got a lot of fibers and stuff on. So I put a good 3 coats of dope on the base surface, and then I put a wet coat on, and then put that stuff on, and then paint a wet coat over top of it and sort of stretch it out, and take a heat gun to it. Let it dry, take a heat gun to it, and all the wrinkles will shrink right out of it, and then you can go around and do your finishing just like the rest of it. But it doesn't sand through easy like this tissue does. It's pretty tough. But I wish you could get it, but I think Coverite made that stuff, and they're no longer in business. They no longer make the stuff. A lot of free flighters. I think the rubber band power, some rubber band power guys use it. It'll shrink enough to warp a light structure, so that's telling you anything the shrinking capability of it. But like I said, it just doesn't go around corners worth of crap. This is the art of a finish right here. It's all in the rough that road. You can probably hear it. I could hear it before in some of the videos that we made. And you can hear it quiet down if you get that rough texture off of it. Keep wiping that. I'm still using that same little piece of sandpaper that I started over there with. And when I go around and do the final sanding, I'll use fresh paper, but listen, when you're using fresh paper, it cuts a lot better. So when you're doing that final finish, you want to be very delicate. I'm not really putting any pressure on this. I'm not really even deflecting the silk span. What I am doing is just enough to just let the sandpaper work. The reason why I like a primer is, for one, it's sort of, you brush on your first 3 or 4 coats of clear dope, and even though you may brush it this way one coat, back and forth this way the next coat, and crossways the third coat, and crossways back the other way on the 4th coat, or whatever, you still leave brush marks. And you go and try to sand those out. And for the most part, I guess you can get it out. I myself can't see it. My eyesight's not good enough to see it anymore, and so consequently, to put some kind of a blocker coat or a primer or something on there brings out all those little faux pas and stuff. And I think I've been pretty fortunate on this airplane. I haven't noticed a whole heck of a lot of places where I need to put any kind of spot putty, but all that comes down to is the prep on the bare wood. You know, you got to make your bare wood as good as you absolutely can, and you got to cover, you got to sand in between every coat of dope, paint, whatever it is that you're putting on your airplane, And the more you sand, the better your finish comes out. So, all your base wood, Sparky goes down to 320. You can go finer than that if you want. I don't know that you really need to. The silk span fills the grain, whatever's left from 320. And, unless you want to frustrate yourself by, more finer sanding, because the finer you get, the easier you gotta go, and the more frustrated you can get, so. That's the nature of the beast, I suppose.
We got 4 watchers and only 3 thumbs up. So whoever's watching who hasn't hit that thumbs up button, hit that like button.
The like button is everything. Unless you don't like what we're doing, then why are you watching?
I watch some videos on YouTube and they're really kind of crappy. And I never hit the thumbs down button.
I've not hit any buttons quite a few times, but when it comes to hitting the not like button, if I don't like it, I just switch channels or never
Right.
watching it.
I don't understand why people can't get a grip on that. Hey, if you don't like it, why are you here? Why are you watching?
Yeah, you got a website that you don't care for, don't go on it. Plain and simple.
Well, that was good. It went from 3 likes to 5 likes with only 3 watchers. I don't know how that happened, but
You might hit it more than once, all right.
yeah, hit it 2, 3 times.
Hit it 2 times.
No, if you hit it 2 times, you dislike it, so don't do that.
But Wendy used to call this, you got to get into the zen of sanding. And you sort of do, because this is pretty dang monotonous. And by the time you do this to this airplane, let's see, from the time I started this airplane and I got the whole framework done, till now, I've probably done basically the same thing 20 times. And I probably got 20 more times in it before the end of the finish. So, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart by all means.
Okay. Gotta try to make these similar. Right there. I can only see one side at a time, but see if they look about even for me.
Measure.
Yeah.
You're a TLAR guy. I can't see it.
You have to look at it from the side. Like I say, you can only see one side at a
You
time.
need to look at it straight down from the top and see if you got it front to rear the right way, and then go from the side and see if you got the up and down.
Yeah, I could go forward a little bit. The canopy hole is not exactly symmetrical.
Yeah. Everything's a trade-off.
That's pretty close. It's close enough. Nobody will know what I'm doing anyway.
Still using that same little piece of sandpaper. Ain't come off my finger yet.
Let's see here.
Still seems to be sanding good.
Pretty much straight up and down.
All this depends on just how far you want to take this. You know, when do you want to abandon your paint job? And real good finish. The guys that abandon their paint jobs the last are the guys with the really, really nice finishes. And even they're probably abandoned. I mean, you can get some pretty nice finishes with rattle cans, spray cans, and stuff like that. Now, they won't be front row concourse finishes, but they'll look really nice, and they'll be a nice utilitarian finish. And
Why wouldn't it be a front row finish with a spray can? The vehicle to put the paint on means nothing.
I'm just talking the different, how much sweat equity do you want to put into it?
I'll guarantee you that you can take a rattle can and do a paint job. You can't tell it's out of a rattle can because you sat there and sanded.
I've done them with Duplicolor
Yeah.
lacquer, Duplicolor lacquer. If you get the little teeny cans, they got a new can now, sort of in between the big can and little can, but the old-fashioned little cans.
Yeah, this is the medium can here.
Yeah, it's smaller than that one. They're only got 1.5 inch diameter and about 5 inches tall. Little cans. They had a really good nozzle on them, a really fine nozzle, and you could spray that shit on there and get it just as light as can be, and nice and smooth. And the cans stayed consistent from beginning to the end. And I did a lot of RC car bodies and stuff back in my RC racing days, and I won concourse numerous times. And all they were Duplico rattle can paint jobs, and they came out great. But I've done quite a few airplanes like that too. Which
The problem with using Duplicolor is it's brittle.
yeah, there's no plasticizers in it, so to say, and it'll crack or craze or alligator, whatever you want to call it, over time. It'll stay pretty good for the beginning. But there's no telling when it'll do that. You may do it the first year, it may take 3 years to do it, but probably the longer you leave it sit out in direct sunlight, the quicker.
Give us a shout out. Let us know what you want to see, what you want us to talk about.
Get a little slack on words.
We don't have any chatters today for some reason. Scott Beard said something twice, and that's it. That's it in 45 minutes. Come on, guys. Type something in a chat box.
Got any how-tos that you got, the way you guys do something, let us know. We're always open for new and better ways, quicker, lighter, stronger. We'll steal every one of your ideas that you give us if you let us. If it works, you know, you spend, see, I'm 53 years old, 63 years old, and I've been doing this since I was about 7. And I'm definitely not afraid of change. I've been the Monaco route, I've been the Rust-Oleum route, and been every which route you could think of, and all sorts of different ways of sanding and covering and all that kind of stuff. And over the years, you sort of put all the different parts and pieces from everybody that you've seen and done, and form your own little system that works for you, and it can always be improved on. It was improved on to begin with, you know, when you first did it. And you listen to somebody and they said, do it like this, and maybe you stuck with that one and it worked real good for you for many, many moons. And then all of a sudden, you know, later in life, you've been out of it for a while and you're re-looking to get back in it. And
I got these two plastic things off. Let me tell you a funny story. Okay, this plastic film is what goes over the top of these stencils here, so that you can transfer the stencil to the airplane. Well, I came over here one time. I cut John some decals, and he painted them on. And when he peeled it up, there was nothing there. You know why? He forgot to take the plastic off. Remember that?
the transfer tape.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was some clear transfer tape. I'm used to tinted transfer tape.
Well, I just checked to make sure I had 2 pieces of transfer tape, so I didn't.
It's easy to do. I went through and taped the whole wing off, whole one side wing. Had a really elaborate paint job to tape the whole thing off. I had it backwards. I take the dark colors off first instead of the light colors, and it doesn't work very well. So I take everything off and redid it to backwards. But I wasn't thinking in reverse. You paint your light colors first and your dark colors second and third, and right on down the line. There you go, guys. There's right the basic sand out of the open base. Basic, I say. And I'll sand the rest of it. And I use one little piece of paper on one side of the airplane. And that's no good anymore. You can feel it until the grit's gone. But barely made it down here to the end. Everything's nice and smooth. Still haven't touched any of the cap strips. I only very lightly touched across this primer, and that's just to make it change colors. Not really to remove anything, so I can see the edge easier. Just makes a little white line like, and I sand right up to that edge, but not on that edge. Then I'll sand all the major areas, and then I'll come through and I'll sand everything again. And only then will I come through here and just barely touch these cap strips and the hard edges. Just one little swipe. And you'll find that as you're sanding all these inner surfaces and these outer surfaces, that you'll actually only come up there and hit that edge here and there. By not touching that edge at all, that gives you a little bit of sanding room. It keeps the paint on there, gives you a thickness of paint or two that you have to go through before you burn that edge and cut through your covering. So do everything first, and then only then do you come back and do all the edges, and that's just a very light swipe at that point in time. It's just so thin you can barely even feel it, and that way you won't burn through as much. of your covering, you know, your tissue paper or whatever you have to be using. And down here. And this is messy. A lot of dust.
I sure hope these come out okay.
You'll be the first to know.
I'm sure I will. I was looking for a propeller manufacturer decal to put on this prop, but I couldn't find one.
Yeah, you gotta look for old fashioned. Hartzell or might not have been a manufacturer for that back then.
Seeing as it was a one-off airplane, counter-rotating propellers.
Just their own machine shop making their own prop.
I'll tell you guys a funny story. At least it's funny to me. I got a piece of metal in my eye this week. Actually last week, and I let it go for a week. And they couldn't do nothing for me at the emergency room, so they sent me over to the, well, the funny thing happened at the emergency room. The lady said, "When was your last tetanus shot?" I said, 1974. She said, "You got to be kidding me." "Yeah, I don't need one." I said, "Oh, you could die if you don't get a tetanus shot." So finally they convinced me to go get a tetanus shot. And I said to him, I said, "Well, I haven't had one since 74. Let's see, I should be good to 108 years old now." I don't like all those shots and antibiotics, and I don't need all that stuff.
Antibiotics are one thing, but when it comes time to mumps, measles, and rubella and that kind of stuff, you gotta watch out. We got that dang flu over in China right now, or whatever it is. It's pretty nasty stuff.
I don't know why they just don't cancel all flights.
We got 100 and some thousand people infected with that in China right now, and yet you're not running a temperature. We're not going to let you. As long as you're not running a temperature, you can fly. You can go anywhere you want to. And I think that's a little bit on the budget side.
Says here from Craig Beswick, "I use Dubro hinges, not up to pocket hinges yet. Any suggestions for cutting hinge slots?" And let's see.
What kind of Dubro hinges? hinge point hinges with the little round ones, or
Oh,
a regular pin, like it's on a door type hinge?
I'm not sure what hinges he's talking about though.
Well, we gotta know what kind of hinge.
I have a lot of trouble. Well, I bought a slotting tool and I didn't like it. So I bought the fork slotting tool by Dubro, and that worked pretty good. And you got a pick and it picks it out. It has a centering template. You center it in the center and just poke that thing in there. So that's what I would do. Get a Dubro slotting tool. You can also take a hacksaw blade and break it and clean them out with that.
Exactly, it makes a little teeny saw blade that goes in an Exacto kind of deal. And you can buy them, you gotta look for them, but they're out there, and they make a couple different kinds. They make one that's a little wider, not so pointy, and then they make one that comes down to a real fine point. And when you get your hole centered, then you can take a little hacksaw blade or saw them out a little bit, or use it as a pick. But you know, draw a line down the center line on your hinges first. Don't just plop your template on there and expect it to be, if you tilt it a little bit one way or another, it'll move them a little bit off center. Then I make a sanding block. You know, you need to relieve. You see this? These are the round plywood hinges that Sparky designed here for this one, and they take a deep pocket. But even with a piano sort of hinge like on a door, you have to relieve that into this edge. So I take a piece of wood that's about 1.5 inches wide, and down the center of it I glue a piece of wood the thickness of that barrel, that end.
16th.
16, and then you put a piece of sandpaper just on that piece. And the wide part will only allow you to sand so deep, and then the sandpaper is only as wide as the hinges, so it sands a perfect slot. So I just sit here and eyeball and go like this, and I relieve the hinges back into the moving surface. And then that's my hinge location, and I come up with some really tight hinges on my airplanes this way, and that's using a pin, I don't know,
Barrel hinge.
Barrel hinge, you might call them. I guess we could get out some hinges and sort of show you the difference. You probably knew what we're talking about. But
While he's doing that, I'll show you what I've been doing over here in the quiet. I've made ready. I still have to tape it up. It'll take half an hour to tape it up. We're going to paint. I put the stencils on it. We're going to paint this white. And I've cut out my decals. And they go on the white. And then the little crown back here goes right here. So hopefully we can get them on. And because Tommy Looper carved this pilot for me, now his name is spelled L-U-P-E-R, but I have Pilot by T. Looper, L-O-O-P-E-R. And we're going to put that right there. And that's probably all the detail that'll go on that airplane, except for ink lines. The ink lines will outline all the radiators and the panel lines, and then I'll clear it. But I have to get some clear on it to seal it. I also fixed, we had a spot up here in the black simulated scoop area that had a nick out of it, and I could have fixed it with an ink pen, but because it's right on the top, right out for God and everyone to see, I decided, well, better not pull the trick of trying to just fake it. I just repainted it this morning. Like I say, I think this airplane's just about to the end of its finish. I noticed just now, you know, this dope is always shrinking. I see a spot that shrunk down, but it will be hidden by death clear when I clear the nose after clearing the whole airplane. But this is the 1 hour a day Tucker Special Series airplane. Started in August of last year. August, September, October, November, December, January. 5 months later. So, and I really didn't work on it much more than an hour a day. It turned up pretty good. I mean, it's got a few snafus in it, but they all do. Yeah, John Craig is thumbs way up. Okay, Jack, no problem. Thank you. I've started on the Tucker XL. Matter of fact, I got to get some motor mounts while I'm over here.
We might have to
Hey.
move this. We'll put this out onto
Get
my microphone here. We'll put this out onto a black surface here. Maybe it'd be a little easier to see. Sparky can zoom in on this.
I don't know about zooming in, but
Well, we got some different kinds of hinges here, and I didn't have the larger kind of this round barrel type hinge pin that are sort of difficult to do because you still got to sand a groove, you know, like this into to let your hinge sit back into your moving surface. But these things you get them out of line, you glue them in and get them out of line, and then they all bind up. And a lot of these hinges that are like this, the little rivet that they put in there, they over tighten and then they're just tight. These hinges, you want them to just flop. And we'll sort of go over the different kind of hinges in here. There's that kind of hinge, and here's your standard Dubro
keep your hands down.
door hinge. I'll call it, you know, things that on the door. With a little pin through it, and it's sort of stamped on one end to flare it out so it won't come out. And then I take these hinges, and they're normally pretty stiff. See, that hinge won't move at all. Here's a hinge that I've redone. It'll just flop. And what I do is I take that little flare on that pin and nip it off and pull that pin out there and throw it away. Then I get a piece of music wire that's the next size smaller in diameter than that wire. And all I do is I bend a little L angle out of that music wire. And while I got this hinge apart, I take an X-Acto knife and I clean the little, you know, flares, you know, from molding flares and stuff off the
Flash.
Flash. And then I make that little L angle. It goes in there. I can get it in there now. Just goes back in there, and when you install it, you run it in line with one of your hinge pins, and when you slide it in, that locks it in there. It can't come out anymore. You just cut off flush on the other end. That makes for a real floppy hinge, and that makes these kind of hinges real good. Now these hinges, you still have to inset them. Although it'll be a wider inset and a lot shallower than these, and for that we'll make a little sanding block up like this, and this piece of wood in the center is the thickness of this little round barrel. It's on these hinges, and with a piece of sandpaper on it.
that you'll take that and you'll find your where you want your hinge, and you'll just start sanding, and it'll go in until it hits these side pieces, and that's your depth stop. And you stop sanding when the sandpaper quits stop. Then you'll be at the right depth, and all your hinges will be alike. And if you do those two steps, remove the hinge pin and put a little piece of music wire in it. Relieve them with a block like this, and all your hinges will be identical. And the last step would be to make sure you get a good center line down the trailing edge of your non-moving surface, whether it be the stab or the wing. It doesn't get anything sanded into it. All it gets is a slot. And you want that slot on every one of them hinges right on that line. And you can take your slot cutting tool, which is a little triangle sort of wedge thing that squeezes down on there, and that'll get you pretty close. But check them all, because if you tilt that thing a little bit, it'll move them up or down. But try your hardest and take your time and get all them on there. Okay, and then we got this final hinge, which is Sparky's sort of hinge, a little piece of plywood. Whatever diameter this hole is, or this whole round part here on the end, is how thick your wing is. These are 3/8 of an inch. This is 1/2 inch. So see, this hinge is a little bit small. I want 1/2 inch round on this round part. I want 1/2 inch for this kind of elevator. But if you're using a piece of 1/4 inch, this is fine. And then it gets a little bushing inside here. And for me, I cut a slot for the hinge pin to get a little bushing in there, and a little short piece of music wire, and run that through the hinge, and then slide it down in there. And then I take a little piece of ingrained balsa wood and stick down in there and hit it with some super glue, and that holds my hinges in. And I can finish this way out all the way in. Sparky does it a little different. He puts these in and then finishes the whole thing. 6 of one, a half dozen other. They both work. But you got to inset your hinges. If you just leave them set out on the surface like that, you'll end up with a big giant gap in there. It's sort of unsightly, and allows air to bleed through there and everything. And
Then you'll be taping them, and you'll have stiff controls. So
Right,
why
now,
would you open up the hinges?
I inlet it with this, and I can get my hinges so that this front part of this moving surface touches the back part of that surface, and there's no bind. But it's literally, you can't hardly see through it. So there's zero gap almost, and I get real nice free moving control surfaces and everything like that. So some guys will leave a gap in there and then tape it. I don't like gaps. I want to see that thing right hard up against it like that. And if everything's centered and your hinges are inset in there the right depth, you can do that, and you'll have nice free moving control surfaces. But if you're using this kind of hinge, always cut the wire out and replace it with the next smaller diameter music wire, and you'll have a much better control system. Much better. And Sparky's hinges, of course, you control the wire diameter size, so you can, these things will flop like something else. With like anything else, it's preparation and finish. So the more you work on these things and the more time you take on them, the better your airplane will fly, because you won't have sticky control surfaces, which you don't want.
Sticky controls is a killer of control line airplanes. What it does is it sets it up for a hunt. The airplane, you'll never be able to get it to groove because you're always searching, and that thing doesn't come back to zero. Then let's say that, God forbid, the wind comes up at the top of the hourglass, blows your no line tension. Well, you can't get it back because your controls are stuck.
So you admit that you're flying an electric airplane. An IC powered plane or a piston motor airplane has a vibration to it that will sort of help a sticky surface to move, because it creates enough vibration in there. But if you're running an electric system that has almost zero vibration, you won't get that. So any stiction that you get in your control surface movement will exaggerate itself to some degree. It'll make your control surfaces even stickier yet. So It's even more beneficial for an electric power airplane to have free moving control surfaces than an IC plane. Not to say that IC doesn't have to have it. It benefits tremendously from it also. But it's one part of the airplane. If you really want a good flying airplane, you have to have free controls. And all these controls should pretty much flop. I mean, if they're not hooked up to the bell crank, push rods, and all that stuff, and you put them on the airplane, they should just be just as free as breeze. Once you start adding all that stuff in there, drag on ball lengths and all that stuff, they'll start getting a little stiff, and the lead outs sort of cause them to not be very smooth. But like this airplane right here, even the way it sets, you can tell there's no bind in what's there right now. There is no bind. You move them, and they just move just as free as they can be. And so when I do my hinge job on this, and I'm using Sparky's hinges on this airplane, it won't add any more drag to what I've already got here in this system. And it's got, I got a soldered elevator joint, but it's got 3 ball links up here in the front, which have a given amount of bind to them, and then the post for the bell crank, which I intentionally made a little sloppy to make it free, and the lead outs where they go through there, I make sure those are real free, and then that's about it. I mean, you just got to work on them, and don't stop when you get to the point of installing your control system. You need to just stop, put the brakes on, get it in right. Don't go any further on your airplane until you do, and it'll be so beneficial to you, it's unbelievable. That is a must. If you rush through it, you'll pay the consequences.
I'm gonna go upstairs and get the tape and a roll of paper, so I can get this taped off, so I can get it painted white. I'll be right back.
Use a roll of paper right there.
Keep them entertained.
We got a roll of paper down here.
There is?
Yeah,
Where's it at?
right here. There's no tape down there. There's a blue tape.
No.
Back to sanding, man. And you can see this side of this wing looks just like that, one solid color. And this is sort of my first sanding. A lot of paint guys will say, well, you burnt your primer. Well, yeah. If I'm doing a car finish, I burnt the primer. But we're looking for super lightweight. So what I'm doing is I'm using the primer as a guide to show up all my low spots. And this is typical with any wood surface. And I'll sand this down, and I don't know that the video will actually pick up on that, but these sides that are still pretty dark gray on here, to me, sitting here looking at them right now, I can see through that. I can see the grain through that dark gray right there. That's how thin that primer is on there. Now, any glaring mistakes, and I have one out here on this wingtip right here, you can see it's light on both sides, and it's got a little dark spot in the center that's still sort of this really dark gray. Well, that's a low spot, so I'll have to touch that with a bit of putty to bring that up, and then just spritz it a little bit with some primer and go back over it and sand it back down.
70 ounces?
And then we'll be good. But how far you chase those things is up to you. And some guys will just leave that right there. It's on the bottom of the airplane. It's not much, but some of them are glaring. A lot of guys, you'll have a spot here where your sheeting joints, your joint lines on your sheeting, or joints back here on this trailing edge. This sort of shows a high spot right here, but there is no bump. Right here where this little piece comes up, there is a little bump on that I'll end up having to fix. Put a little super fill in there. So get to this point, get it all sanded out, and then you run through and do all your little spot putty things. Whether it's super fill or that green
3M Echo
3M
Green.
Acro Green putty. It's all heavy, so as much as you keep filling and dinging and all that stuff and re-primering, the more it weighs. So my next step to this thing, I weighed this part of the airplane without the cowling and the flaps and elevators and landing gear and all that stuff on it. And I weighed this right after I put the primer on it. I wrote that weight down. I'm gonna do all this sanding and stick it back on the scale and see how much I took off of it. And I can already tell you that it's pretty substantial. 1 can of that primer probably puts on 4 ounces. Maybe not quite 4 ounces, but I'll bet you it's pretty close to weight on this whole airplane. Now what I'm going to try to do is get over 50% of that off of there. I'd like to see a quarter of the weight. And the way you achieve that is, you get it sanded and you weigh it that first time after you think you got it all sanded, and then you look in horror at the scales and they say, man, that's 2.5, 3 ounces of just primer on there. Well, sand it off. Don't need to be on there. All it's doing is it's only on there to fill in the low spots and smooth things out. So once you put primer on, always use a sanding block. You'll be level on large surface areas. And just keep working on it, because the big thing is you want to take all them high spots down a little bit and fill in the microscopic low spots. And that's all I can say. Elbow grease. About it. Elbow grease.
Grease by the pound.
This is sort of the nasty, sort of messy part of the game.
Finishing is not really fun.
This can be a little tedious. Gotta get into the zen of sanding. If you get tired, walk away from it a while. Personally, I like to do, well, I'm not doing it right now, so I guess I'm sort of lying to you, but I normally just take this wing panel, this one section, and I sand out this whole one section for my first sand out. And then I get up and walk away, go take a break. Go do something else, puddle around the house, go out and cut the grass, whatever you want to do, come back and do another section. Don't try to sit here and do this whole airplane in one setting. You'll burn yourself out. But just pick a section, work it over real good, and then move on and get it done, or 90% of the way done, and then move on to another section. It'll help you keep track of it too, because you'll have the places that aren't sanded yet. And this one, missed the panel. I've got to sand that panel out. You find it's easier to keep track of, and where you're done at, and whatever, as long as you just take your time and just do the little sections.
The reason he's not doing that is because I'm over here and I don't have a whole lot of time that I can work on things like this in my current situation. When I'm at home, well, of course, I just plow through it anyway at home.
I try to help Sparky out when he's over here because if there's limited time in the shop. And sort of put mine to the side, so to say, because I'm here, I've got the shop.
come down here anytime I want to. But even though I got a shop, doesn't mean I sit down and camp out down here 24/7. I don't. It's a nice shop and everything, and at first I probably did, but like the other day I was in the process of getting some more machinery, bringing some more machinery down here, so all the building was put off to the side to get machinery down here. And I got more machinery out in the garage that I gotta get out into the shed and put together and all that stuff, and I started a little bit on that this morning. But then I stopped from that because I get a little bored with it. And work on my airplane for a little bit. Sparky's over here. Do these videos.
I paint that white. I shouldn't need to have to mask this whole thing off if I'm painting with the airbrush, right?
I put towels on everything. That's how I do it.
Well, you saw me do this black line without taking as much off.
That's totally up to you. All I know is how I would do it.
Kind of control the airbrush so it's not puking out everywhere. I think that can, the time that it spritzed, it was just a fluke. Of course, it had to do it on my airplane.
Probably from the paint that was in the gun before the tip.
I think I want to take some clear, even though we can't clear in the airbrush, and I want to blend that spot right there to try to seal it up, because it looks like it's peeling back. Let's see, anybody say anything? Oh, thanks again, way thumbs up. Yeah, I'm glad I took that MC72 off of there. It looks a lot better that way.
Yeah. It was a little lopsided. I don't know if I'll get this sanded enough to weigh it and actually get a good weight.
Oh, you're gonna weigh it.
Oh yeah, but I mean today. A lot of sanding. I mean, I'll weigh it with the rough sanding and then I'll do a detail sanding. The whole time you're doing this stuff, you're sort of looking for spots. You're looking for them little spots. There's a little spot right there. You can't hardly tell it, but it's low right there. You can tell it didn't sand it flush. It'll leave that primer's right in there. This is just your sanding guide.
And if anybody watched Windy videos, this process that John's doing is basically the same as what like Gacabone and Windy and all them other guys did in silver. But silver is heavier than primer because it's real metal. And it has zero, I mean, the adhesion on silver is totally terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But they would sand or put the silver on and sand their airplanes out and go through exactly the same thing John's doing. Of course, them guys went pretty extreme.
They'll do 5 or 6 sand outs. They'll spray it 5, 6, 7 times with silver and sand it all down to this every time.
Yeah.
And eventually they'll leave a little bit more on there, a little bit more, and eventually become one color. All silver, but it'll fill in all the low spots.
Those airplanes looked like a piece of metal when they were done, but
oh, it's beautiful airplane.
Man, is that stuff heavy.
This is all detail work. That's why it's sort of fussy and time consuming and slow, but you gotta enjoy building too. I enjoy building as much as I enjoy flying almost. Doesn't say I don't like flying less. I just like the fact that I sat here. I built this airplane. This is a scratch build airplane, well, from a set of plans. And I hand cut every single part out for it. I didn't hire any laser cutting done. I put it all together from a set of plans, and I get a lot of satisfaction out of there. And to go out there and set your airplane out on a tarmac, and everybody looks at it and says, "Man, that's a really good looking airplane." Get a lot of satisfaction out of that. But it's a tough thing to do, to build an airplane and make it look pretty, but still be light. Big thing right there, still be light. Right now in this process right here, they can pork out in a heartbeat, and most guys think, well, I think the adage was about 10 ounces for a finish for many a moon. But 10 ounces is hard to get, and we're looking at trying to get a 6-ounce finish or less, which is, as Sparky said, it calls it painting without paint. But you use this. This is the key to your light finish. The sandpaper stuff and how long you sit over your airplane and do this. It's a key to the light finish. It's key to a pretty finish. Beautiful finish. I've seen kits put together where they just took the pieces out of the box and glued them together and covered it. They didn't even round off the square edges on anything. Oh, look at what I did. Ain't this really nice? I went, yeah, it's okay. You put a kit together, but you really didn't build it. It takes some sanding. You gotta get close to your piece of sandpaper and work on it, and it pays off big dividends. So this little time you spend doing this stuff, in the long run, you end up with a nice looking airplane. And people will in awe, and it won't weigh 80 ounces. These airplanes right here, we're not even getting them as light as they used to. I mean, they used to build these airplanes right here in about the 36, 38 ounce range.
Yeah, but you're not telling them we're giving up 2 ounces just in the engine.
Yeah, I don't have a Fox 35 in it, so it's 2 ounces heavier there, but they also had better wood back then than we got available to us today, and
the dope was better, aerogloss.
A lot of those guys, and if you look at some old I-Wing Beamer builds, those guys were kids. They were 15, 16, 17 years old, and they'd sit in their backyard with a little teeny round piece of sandpaper on their finger, working little teeny circles over that whole surface, and meticulously sealing the things. And yeah, they come up with some beautiful airplanes and a very light finish, but it's all sweat equity. You just can't get more sweat equity than that.
This must have been the roll I left over here. I was gonna have this all taped off this morning, but didn't have no paper.
Well, I had 2 rolls of that. That's one of them, and the other rolls out in the garage.
Yeah.
And the other papers that had the other 2 rolls.
Yeah, this is much better stuff. I won't be over tomorrow, I know for sure. I've been putting off laundry now for 3 weeks. I have to do laundry.
Well, that's 20 pairs of pants, so you got only last so long.
All the way across in one piece. I mean,
There's towels out there in the garage. Yeah, there should be. Or there's some right underneath you, dude. But yeah, they're down on the table out there. On that table.
well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to end this part of the video. We've been on now hour and a half. We'll be back probably after lunch. I'll have the rondelles painted. We'll apply some decals and bore you to death for another half an hour or so. So till after lunch, keep building. See ya.